Hello and welcome back. I'm Victor's daughter, and tonight we're going to talk about sage, crystals, and placebo effects. The first thing is anytime you ask for help with whatever situation, invariably there's going to be someone who says, sage it. This is sage. This is a mini sage smudge bundle. And this is evil. I say that it's evil because I will go into the world's worst choking fit if this is smoldering anywhere near me. Now that is actually not an uncommon reaction to sage. And no, it doesn't mean I'm an evil spirit. Well, I already know I'm an evil spirit, but that's completely beside the point. There are also people who are actually allergic to sage and will have anaphylactic shock in that their throat will close up and they will not be able to breathe. You don't know that you're allergic until you have the experience, and trust me, it's not a fun experience. So be very, very careful before burning sage for any reason. Also, sage can be extremely harmful for any small pets that are in the area when you're burning it, because they have very small lungs, and it doesn't take a lot to cause all kinds of problems. So, again, be very, very careful. Sage itself will do a very good job of its one and only thing, and that is kicking out energy. The problem is no one ever remembered to tell anyone, replace the energy. That's the important part when it comes to using sage. You've got to replace what's been kicked out, or else everything you kicked out is going to flow right back in because nature abhors a vacuum. So when you use sage, please be mindful of how you're using it, why you're using it, and where you're using it. Also, there are a lot of entities out there who couldn't care less if you use sage. It will not bother them. They will not go anywhere. You will not have accomplished anything. There are also a number of entities out there who will get really pissed off. They won't go anywhere. You can't make them go anywhere with sage, but they can get really annoyed about it and make things very, very interesting for you. Something else to keep in mind before you use sage. Sage is a very good thing to use if you just want to clear your space before your ritual, so you can reprogram the energy to match what your ritual is, whether you're doing that alone or you're doing that as a public ritual in the park. Sage does very well the one thing it accomplishes. Very, very well. If you're using sage to try and smudge yourself, that's not going to get very far. Mostly because any issues you have are going to be a lot more than just energy. It's going to be deeply rooted in your personal psyche. So sage isn't going to get rid of anything. That will be a placebo. Placebos have their place. Placebos are very useful, but placebos are not spell work because there's no energy used, there's no will. You can have all the intent in the world, but there's no mechanism to make it happen. That's why it's a placebo. It's the same as in science when your placebo is just a sugar tablet. There is no mechanism to make something happen. The reason something does happen is because your subconscious mind has grabbed onto the idea and has run with it. And that can often be very detrimental depending on how your subconscious has interpreted things. So that's sage in a nutshell. Hopefully I wasn't too confusing. On to the next thing is going to be pretty crystals. I love my crystals. I really, really like my crystals. My crystals are shiny and pretty, and they make my inner magpie very, very happy. I like crystals. They don't often feature in my witchcraft, actually. I just like to collect them. If you want to use crystals in witchcraft, you can absolutely do that. But please, please avoid this idea that quartz crystals can substitute for any other kind of crystal. They can't. Anyone who's telling you this has either been hoodwinked themselves, or that, again, they're giving you a placebo. If you're going to use crystals, you need to figure out what kind of crystals you want, figure out what the properties are of those crystals, and how you're going to use them. Now, quartz crystals, very common quartz crystals, are very useful in directing energy. You can also use them to store energy. Think of a battery. They work very well for that. You can use them as a basic filter to if you're taking energy out of someone. If you're going to use it as a filter, that is fine, but make sure you clean it. You've got to cleanse your crystals after use. And there's many varieties of ways to cleanse, and what you use is going to depend on your preference and also what kind of crystal you're using. Quartz you can run underwater just fine. It's not going to hurt your quartz crystal to be underwater. Put a selenite wand underwater and you're not going to have a selenite wand for very long. It will dissolve. Likewise, so you probably want to avoid salt, as salt can be very corrosive to crystals depending on what kind you have. Moonlight and sunlight moonlight generally doesn't hurt anything because it's reflected sunlight, so it's generally not an issue. Sunlight can adversely affect crystals. Leaving amethyst in sunlight will leach out the color, and you'll end up with what looks like citrine. In fact, the two, both citrine and amethyst, are types of quartz. What gives them the color is the various impurities that are involved, and those impurities will react to things like sunlight. That's why you want to get to know your crystals, and you want to get to know how to care for them. When you go to a lapidary shop, a rockhound shop, ask the person who's selling them about your crystals. And they may not have any understanding of the magic behind them, but they will tell you how to care for them, what to avoid, and generally how to maintain your pretty little stones. So we've now gone over two very large placebos that you will find in witchcraft communities and paganism in general. The third one actually is rosemary among herbs. I will probably save that for another video dealing with herbs because that's a huge issue in and of itself. But along the lines of placebos, you also have something called headology. Headology is a term coined by Sir Terry Pratchett in his Discworld books. And it's a wonderful term because it describes what many people have done and used just habitually to deal with things, and we never had a term for it. Well, now we do. Headology is what people are meaning when they say a curse can't hurt you if you don't believe in it. Headology is my coming up to you scowling, I curse you! But I haven't actually done anything. All I've done is told you that you're cursed. So, oh, hi Cosmo. So now you think, I'm cursed. Your subconscious is going to run with that. And you're going to start making some very questionable choices that have some horrible results. And all of a sudden, your life is now cursed. But I haven't done anything other than say the words to you. That's all I've done. Everything else is on you. It's your energy and it's your effort. So, if you believe in rule of three or karmic law or any kind of returns crap, it doesn't matter because you haven't done it. You haven't done anything. This is why Headology is so nice. It doesn't take a lot of effort. It just needs you to sell the idea. That's all you have to accomplish. And it works really well. It works really well, especially on annoyances who are not worth the time and the energy to actually curse them. Because realistically, a curse takes effort. And sometimes that effort is justifiable. A lot of times it isn't. If you went around cursing everyone who pissed you off, you'd be exhausted. You wouldn't be able to get out of bed. You'd be so exhausted. So, Headology is a nice secondary choice. So that's basically what I've got to say for right now. As always, you're more than welcome to leave a comment, ask questions, and I will happily try and get to you all and see if I can help you out. Have a good night, folks.